Alexandra Rita Klaus has been weaving for over 35 years and is a master of fine willow work. Her unique designs show a skillful collection of techniques from Germany, Italy, Ireland, Spain, France, Uganda, and Burkina Faso, in which she has experimented with a diversity of materials, including willow, paper band, chestnut bark, bamboo, fine synthetic cords, and leather. During the mid-80s, Alexandra studied basketry for 3 years at the Litchenfels National School of Basketry under the expert tuition of Wilfred Pop, Mr. Wertmann, Mr. Oster, and Alfred Schneider. Since then, her preferred method of learning is swapping techniques whilst making with friends who are basket makers. Michael Tirschmann taught her the Perigord weave, Yette Melgren taught her the Odera technique, and Carlos Fontales introduced her to Esparto and the coffin technique. Alexandra's ability to mix materials together, such as white willow skeins dyed with indigo alongside synthetic silver cord, creates rich combinations of colour and texture. She weaves curves and bends into her Neolithic weave bags, creating sensual contorted forms. Alexandra's manipulation of fine willows is perfection. Her shift attache, or slanted handbag, has an appearance of a finely woven linen textile. The side stakes and weavers are so fine and close together, they create a warp and weft effect. Her Odero wall pieces have a striking impact, with bold coloured central patterns and burst with energy. Alexandra moved to Italy in the late 1990s and now weaves, teaches and sells from her workshop in Molini di Prela and Liguria. Alexandra's lifestyle has meant that she has successfully avoided the internet and social media throughout her career and instead has sold her work at the French fair at Vallebreg for 25 years and also at Salt and Mas de Barberans in Spain and Litchenfels in Germany. She teaches throughout Europe, for example at the French basketry organisation L'Oserie du Possible, Rencontre Autour du Soul, a French festival, and Soul en Vie in Belgium, and in her workshop in Italy. Hello, Alexandra, and welcome to Woven Lives. Can you start by telling us what made you decide to become a basket maker?
When I was 18, I stopped my formation in the secondary school because I couldn't see a future in this kind of school and were looking for something else to learn. And my father, he came up with a work that his idea was that I could become a brush maker because he had friends in Munich. They would kind of give me a possibility to do a professional formation to become a brush maker. And I couldn't imagine to become that, but they would give him the address of the basketry school in Litchenfels. And I felt inspired by the idea to be a basket weaver because I would my imagine was that I could be very free and independent in my life and wouldn't need to have money to have tools or a big workshop. So I went there and to visit the basketry school in Litchenfels, and I entered and I knew that I would go there if they would accept me. And these years there were still a lot of people applying to get a place there. But I managed to be accepted and I started then when I was 19 years old.
So were you one of the youngest people on your course?
No, because there were several people quite younger than me. They might have had 15 years only. But they were kind of coming from traditional basket makers families.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So we were quite a mixture. We were 27 in our class, if I remember well.
Wow. As many as that in one class.
Yeah.
And was the tutor teaching that many people at once, or was the class divided up and different tutors took different students?
No, we would always be together in one class.
Okay.
The classrooms, they used to be big enough for all of us.
And can you explain what the course was like? So what you did in the first year when you started and how that changed for each year?
In the first year, we would start with the fine weaving, the skein work, which is a traditional technique in this part of Germany. And we would do that, and we would do learn to, what is when you repair chairs?
Chair seating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would do chair seating and work with different materials like paddock, which is rattan, I imagine.
Yeah.
And we would kind of work the first year, we would always work things over a mole, a wooden mole. All these techniques would be made like this.
Okay.
And the second year was willow work. And we used to use white willow, basically. And we would do round, oval, quite a lot of square baskets, quite traditional baskets, and some baskets with brown willow. In the third year, we would build furniture with rattan.
And this, going back to your second year, when you were making baskets with white willow, were they kind of like traditional German designs? So throughout history, that was the same kind of basketry that was the heritage or the historic baskets of Germany?
Yes, I learned a lot of traditional German basketry. Thanks to the work of Alfred Schneider, he was the director of the school. He had a bit an influence from Bauhaus, and there was also a design school not far away that he would try to collaborate a bit. And so we would have also some modern models, a bit more modern.
Yeah.
And you could also, this kind of was an influence in the school. So we had the traditional, very traditional work, and this style which was influenced by the school in Coburg was called the place where it was.
Okay, so you're getting a mixture of modern work and traditional work.
Yeah.
And then in your third year, you're doing furniture, mostly with cane, not with willow?
Actually, we never used willow for furniture. We were using cane.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the tutors that you had there? What was their work like?
The tutors, they were kind of coming from traditional basket makers families, because in the area of Litchenfels there used to be a lot of basket makers, and there would be also a big production of baskets in the early 19th.
Yeah, early 1900s.
Yeah, early 1900s.
Was that when they were making the most baskets, like in the UK?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And Wilfred Pop, he was the tutor for the fine weaving. He was, as I remember, very skilled in all his techniques. He was very precise. And I would say that I think that I learned most of what I learned. Also the way of working I learned from him. And the second year we had a man called, his name was Mr. Wertmann. What I remember is that he would never work in the class. He would only explain and never work. So I would never see him working on his own piece. Maybe he would kind of put his hands on yours, but you couldn't really learn so much about that. I'm actually all this I learned a lot after that by French basket weavers, which I always admired for their precise work and all the techniques they have.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the third year we had Mr. Öster, and we had an enormous classroom, and we had also we learned also to work with big machines.
Yeah.
And fire and how to treat wood and all this kind of stuff. And in this third class, I remember that I could also realize maybe furniture what I would design on myself.
Okay.
In the other class, you didn't have really the possibility to create your own style. It was very strict about techniques and how it had to be.
Until you made the furniture in the third year.
Yeah.
And so there was a little bit of a design, like teaching design in the third year as well? Or did you just have to like understand the techniques that you'd been taught and then make your own work from that?
Actually, we had a bit of a theory.
Yeah.
There, our teacher was the director of the school, Alfred Schneider. He would kind of teach materials, history about materials and theory of the materials you could use. We would do a kind of technical design. So we would kind of learn how to you must imagine when you make a rattan chair, you are working in a 3-dimensional form, and which is you have to reproduce in a flat on a paper. And thanks to the paper, you reproduce a 3-dimensional form. And we learned how to draw that during the classes. We learned also how to draw baskets. We learned about techniques from all over the world. And a real design course, we didn't have that. This was more or less always reproducing models that we would have in the school. But this these days when I was in the school, the school was it's very traditional because it was still, you could find work as a dependent basket weaver. So the idea was to bring people to the point to work in a factory. It wasn't about having your own ideas.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah. And this changed, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. They are now completely different. They have a big, make a big, they put a big importance on design and much less on techniques. And meanwhile, we were working actually every day, Monday to Friday, from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay. Quite an intense course.
Yeah, it's a whole, it's a work.
Yeah.
It used to be.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because it's something we don't have in this country. So, it's great that there is a school in Germany still going where you can do the 3-year course. And it's interesting the way it's changed as well, that people were being trained for industry, but now they're being trained to be designer makers. So it's a kind of a reflection of how society has changed in a way, that we have less people making for industry and more making for, as an independent maker. It's fascinating. So after you did this, you then studied for 3 months in Ireland. You were worked with a man called Joe Shanahan. And can you describe why did you go over to Ireland, and can you tell us a little bit about Joe Shanahan's work?
For me, it was a possibility to stay a bit longer in Ireland, which I always wished. I could have go to a basket weaver all over Europe, but I wanted to go to Ireland. Of course, also about the English language, because I didn't speak French at that moment. And I found Joe Shanahan thanks to a list of craftsmen in Ireland. And he was a big contrast to my experience in the school. He was very messy. I remember him sitting in bits of willow all over the space.
Yeah.
And he was working mostly with willow which has been boiled to get off the skin.
Oh, buff willow.
Buff,
yeah,
you
yeah.
call that buff willow, yeah. And Joe Shanahan, he was already over 70 when I met him. And he would kind of, he didn't make traditional Irish basketry. He did some Irish techniques a bit in a more modern way, and tried to find new models and new expression of Irish basketry. A lot of years after my experience in Ireland, I met an Irish basket maker, and she invited me in her workshop to teach a class. And we were going together to Carrick-on-Suir, where Joe Shanahan had his workshop. And she knew him quite well, and she could also tell me much more about his life, because he did kind of bring his more modern basketry, would bring it to England and also to France. which was quite exceptional for these years, because you must imagine that he was already 75 and this must have been, it was 88.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember that he didn't have children, and he had a man working with him, a young man working with him when I was there. And because he was hoping to give his knowledge to somebody, as he didn't have children, but he didn't manage. When I went back to Carrick-on-Shore, the workshop was shut down, but there was a small museum where you could find this several pieces from him and a lot of photographs of John Shanahan.
So they'd made a museum for Joe Shanahan.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And was the room as messy as you remembered it in the museum?
No, the museum wasn't in his old workshop.
I see.
Museum was in another building at Carrick-on-Shore.
Okay. That's great that they celebrated his life and work like that.
Yeah.
Do you think it's still there now?
I think so.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, that can make me think that he has been, for the Irish basketry, he has been also important.
Yeah.
He has never been recognized, I think, from the makers who does more contemporanean basketry.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he had a lot of his work was rooted in traditional Irish work.
Yeah.
And he started to develop it slightly.
Yeah. And for me, it was important to go there because I needed this, because the school in Germany was so strict. And so Joe Shanahan was something on the opposite side. So for me, it was very good. And I still, when I came back from Ireland, actually certain techniques I would use for years and years, and I still use them.
Okay. Which ones can you remember which ones they are?
Especially the techniques for the square baskets. That in the German technique for square baskets is a lot of work and is very straight. You're not able to put any organic movement in that. So I was fascinated that you could kind of, with the Irish technique, I felt more comfortable, and I made a whole series of handbags with this technique afterwards.
Okay. And you said you still use those techniques now sometimes?
Yeah. Yes.
So you still have a little bit of Joe Shanahan in your work. That's really lovely.
I do.
And so after you'd been to Ireland, and you then came back and you studied a 2-year design course. Was that straight after Ireland, or did you continue basket making first before you went to your design course? And I was just going to ask you how the design course that you did, how did that change the way you made baskets? Did it inform your basketry work in any way?
When I came back from Ireland, I first found a job as a dependent basket weaver in the south of Germany, nearby the Bodensee. It's near the Swiss frontier. And the name of the owner was Peter Sturm. There I worked almost a year, I think. And we were working a lot in living willow and living willow construction, which had become then afterwards quite famous. I was working with Peter, but he, in these years, he would start to work with Marcel Kalberer from an organization what was called Sanfte Strukturen. And we would kind of collaborate with him, harvest the willow, and try to find the techniques to get it stable and all that. And afterwards that I quit the job in Peter's place, I went to Berlin and found a basket maker. He was called Altmann. I don't think that this is existing anymore. And I made the baskets. They had the orders actually, and you had to make several measures that people would like you to make. But this was also quite sad because I was sitting alone in the
basement.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh no. All by yourself.
Yes.
Working to commission.
Yeah. So I didn't resist a lot.
How long did you stay there for?
Half a year, maybe.
Yeah. Not much fun working in the dark.
No.
Underground.
Yeah. And then I got to know about this place which is called Akademie für Gestaltendes Handwerk. This would be a school that would last 3 years, and there were all kind of crafts people. I was the only basket maker. And we would kind of had classes for drawing, photography, modeling with clay, art history. It was a very vast input from all kind of arts, and which wasn't immediately really connected with our craft. And I found it very inspiring. I loved it. I didn't finish it. I stopped after 2 years and moved then back to the south of Germany.
And do you think this course helped you creatively? Do you think it made you more creative, or how did it change the way you made baskets?
I think I always felt that the way I worked would kind of, I don't know, if I remember well, it's that already during the academy, I was kind of always searching to find new textures, and maybe find shapes would kind of coming out of the technique itself, that it wouldn't be me that I would give that shape, or that shape would be determined by the technique, by the color, so that I would be not the only one who would create it. And I remember that this kind of research started when I was in this academy. I found it very inspiring also to be together with other people who would kind of research also everybody maybe in its own way. Yeah, I think also the drawing, it gives you another view. You are kind of looking with other eyes on things when you start to draw.
You're studying quite intensely, aren't you? And studying shapes and patterns, and yeah. We have a similar course in the UK, which is called a art foundation course. It's only 1 year, and it's a similar idea, you know, getting young artists to use different materials. I'm not sure if that course is still running anymore, but I think it's really very important if you want to make your own work to experiment and have the opportunity to have time out to experiment and work with other materials, and especially what you say about being around other makers. I think that's really important, because you said before that you really like weaving with other people and swapping techniques, and that's a way you enjoy learning. You do that in your workshop with your friends, and you were explaining to me that this is one way that you learnt the Odero technique. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you developed the Odero technique and how you created the wall hangings?
The years when I would go to Salt, which is in nearby Girona, it's in Catalonia. After the fair, which is there, you have a basketry fair. We would go with some makers to share the knowledge in a friend's house in the Pyrenees. And 1 year we had Yette Melgren. She had a project in Uganda about weaving. And she would teach a workshop where she would teach several techniques from Uganda. And we did this Odero weave. This weave would, in Uganda, that would kind of make a flat basket, which would be used for drying food, and which was made of stiff, small branches and soft material for binding. And we used to use raffia in this workshop. I remember that in the same year in the fair, there was a lady, she would sell this paper band, colored paper band from Japan. And I would kind of buy it. I didn't know what to make out of it, but I was always interested in materials and things you could experiment. So I remember I would already have that, and I had the technique, and I then realized that I could use the paper band to make this technique, that I could use willow, and I started first with maybe one color, because I couldn't imagine that you could also use more colors or different designs. And then it grew, and it became this Odero wall piece I'm making now. And I remember the Odero technique is actually a fine weaving technique from the first year in Litchenfels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you explain how the how the branches or the willow rods are connected together with this technique? And how does the paper band connect them?
Actually, the paper band does bind 2 layers of willow together. I have a vertical direction of willow and a horizontal layer. And with this stitch, it's really kind of a stitch. You connect it. You have one side you have the vertical stitch and the other side you have kind of a diagonal stitch. And like that, you create a quite stable structure. And in this Odero wall piece, I would kind of then, with a circle, kind of spread it out with a technique from the fine weaving with 4 weaving elements. And then you could, and this would be enough to keep them spread and flat, so that would stay there.
And in Germany, they use this to make a base of a basket. Is that correct?
Yes. It used to be used for this base for square fine work and sometimes also oval or round.
Okay. So it's just a complete coincidence that it was used in Uganda and Germany. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And
it's funny.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then you went on to learn about the Neolithic weave. And how do you use the Neolithic technique in your work? You have handbags and baskets that you weave with this technique. It's really beautiful. Very fine willows, really, really thin willows that you do it with, and a beautiful rolled border. Can you explain more about this technique?
This technique is often called also Neolithic braid or Burkina Faso. I found out over the years that the same idea to weave also the uprights, that usually you wouldn't weave them in a traditional basket. In this case, the idea is to use the uprights also for weaving horizontally, and that you would find that in several Mediterranean countries as Italy, France, Spain, Croatia, and that it would be made from different materials. Myself, I arrived from the Périgord technique, which is the technique from the southwest of France. I learned that with a German basket maker, Michael Tirschmann, years ago when I finished the school afterwards. And then I always experimented in this technique, changed also the pattern. And like that, I see that the Périgord weave is more or less very stiff. You don't have so much possibilities to put an organic shape. And as I changed the pattern, I found out that I could actually change the shape and get it more organic, more fine, more more smooth. And over the years I kept to use it as a technique to create my baskets. But I realized that it keeps on changing. I always find new possibilities. Now I'm trying to look what does it become if I add only in several points of the basket. How would that change the shape? So it's really funny. It's like knitting.
I saw that on your piece that you've brought to the workshop. So it expands when you keep adding in a place. It expands the shape and increases the shape.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because you've got these beautiful, like, curvaceous sides to it, haven't you?
Yeah, and this is kind of becoming like that is only by adding in a several point, and it's the same. It's not me that I make it. I follow it. It's kind of to find a process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you enjoy working in this way?
Yeah.
Where you're kind of discovering things as you go along? The more you make, the more possibilities you find?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And how do you make this border, the really beautiful sort of small, thin woven border that curls around? It looks gorgeous on the top of the handbags.
Yeah, actually that border is a rattle technique. Is the rattle technique?
Oh, the same as the corn dollies.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is a border, it is a weave that it adapts very good if you don't have a lot of space in between the uprights.
Okay.
And it's kind of this weave is kind of a spiral that you have a braid which would always continue. And this border is a continuation of the braid, actually. So I like this idea, even if you can't see it in the end, but that you kind of continue and it adds perfectly to that technique.
So what you mean is you're never adding more. You're using the same rods that you started off with.
Exactly.
All the way through the whole basket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a really nice idea. And what kind of willow do you like using? Do you get willow in Italy that you can use, or do you have to get your willow from somewhere else? Is there like a favorite willow that you have?
I think mostly I use willow from the Purpurea family. Because this one is quite long and thin and it's not too stiff. Over the years, I would use a willow which is called Ural, which I got from a German willow grower. But over the years, this variety became more stiff. And so in this moment, I don't use it anymore. And I'm using more or less French willow.
Okay, and it needs to be soft. Does it need to be soft?
Yeah.
To get the plait right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I love those dark coloured ones that you use. They're beautiful. They're almost black, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. And did you say that one was called Alba? The dark black one?
Yeah, Alba is soft enough, but often Alba has a quite big part. The foot, how do you call
the butt of the
the
rod.
bottom?
Yeah.
Often is compared to the length quite big. So I didn't use that so much, but now I found out as in these years, the willow from the willow grower in France, I get the willow from, has been very bad, and it would
Forked.
forked.
Yeah, okay.
So I kind of found out that I could also replace what I needed to replace, also the whole number of willow weavers that I would use. I could also replace them. So it is also, you could also use the alba for a part maybe, and then go on with another variety of willow, which gives still more possibility to play with it.
Okay, lovely. Yeah. And then can we talk about your shift attache? I love these handbags that you make. They're really beautiful. It's a slanted handbag, and it's woven with really, really thin, fine rods. And the really unusual thing is that all the uprights are diagonal or slanted, which works so beautifully. I've never seen anything like it before. It's gorgeous. So it's so unusual to see uprights which aren't perfectly straight like this. And can you tell us how you've achieved this effect? How do you get them to go so neatly into the slanted position?
Yeah. First thing to say maybe is that I got inspired by a friend from Germany. His name is Klaus Seifang. He used to do huge baskets with this drift to the left. And it's thanks to him that I a bit learned about the technique, how I could add more weavers in a French rending, and that this would help to bring the uprights to the left. Usually in the traditional basketry, you would always work against this tendency that they would kind of go to the left, because the French rending is woven a bit diagonally. And so that was always give a shift to the left. And we would always work against that. I remember very well in school that they had really to be.
It happens to everyone, I think. It's annoying at the time. But lovely that you've gone with it, haven't you? You've accepted it and made it into a beautiful thing.
And now I'm in this case, I found out a method to put 3 sets of weavers for the French rending, one after the other, but all quite in the beginning of in the big part of the willow, down in the basket. And that would really make it more diagonal, the weaving. So this helps to go more to the left. And I found out that I could use this shift to create a different shape, which maybe every time I make it, it's different, because every willow is different, and I might have also different different
uprights, or
different uprights. and different space in between the uprights.
Because they're really close together, aren't
Yeah.
they? They're
Yeah.
so fine.
Yeah.
You must only have like 5 millimeter space.
No, it's a bit more.
Slightly more.
Yeah. It's might be 1 centimeter, maybe a bit less. Yeah. And this is really modeling. You need very small willow. And this used to be also interesting because this would give kind of, I would use willow which would have 80 centimeters that normally nobody would use, and you could always find it. And this was good also for the willow growers. So it could be used. And
there's no
also
waste.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. That's lovely. Can you tell us about how you find new ideas? If you got new ideas for future work, and if you do, how do you come to a new idea?
To a new idea. It usually happens, like I described before, when I got into this experience with the Odero weave. It's kind of that more elements come together. It's always a bit about sharing, that I get inspired also by the work of other people. And then I need to experiment it on my way. And then it's also about doing it for a while, giving it a time, and maybe for a certain while really try to work and to see what you can make about it. And also I try to imagine also what kind of basketry we want to have in this moment of our society, of our lives, of our styles. Is there a basket which is modern, contemporanean, and useful? I think it's, and then it's sometimes, as I have also quite often students that they would like to become professional weavers. I see part of my research is also to find models that other people, young weavers maybe that somebody could also make a living out of that, kind of finding really modern possibilities to express. And often also about this idea to teach, to give it also a different texture. I find new expressions in my weaving.
Okay, thanks. And can you tell us which basket makers you most admire?
I think I'm not able to tell names. There are so many, and maybe I admire certain people for certain techniques or ways to do. I admire also because in these years I've seen that we had also people that kind of helped basketry a lot to make it more modern. Maybe they weren't that brilliant basket makers, but maybe they would put their life, their time, their money, their energy to organize, to help it. I feel I always admire this will to bring that away so that it's not lost.
Mm. Yeah, we need those people, don't we?
Yeah,
to keep it going.
it is so important.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about the French basketry fair that you've attended for the last 25 years at Vallebreg? Because in the UK, we don't have basketry fairs like they do in France. It'd be quite nice to know a little bit about it. And especially, is there a lot of basket makers at Vallebreg? What's it like there?
Vallebreg changed a lot over the years. Vallebreg, I think it's 25 years that I went the first time to Vallebreg. For me, was a new world because I didn't know so far really basket makers from other countries. I would have known the German basket makers and some Italian maybe. And Vallebreg used to be, you would meet such a lot of people from all over Europe. I met Monica Gilera, I met Eva Seidenfaden, which I shared a lot about the Neolithic weave. And I met a lot of French basket makers. I met this excellence of French basketry. And Vallebreg used to be very international. It used to be also a place where you could find excellent willow. But over the years, and especially during the COVID, it didn't happen. And they couldn't organize it anymore like before. And now they have a new organization. And it's nice. It's quite different. Because before it used to be also a big festival for the village. You would have big concerts and a lot of people. And a lot of basket makers. And now I've been there this year and last year, and you have a lot of young French basket weavers, a whole new generation of weaving.
That's nice.
And they are already very inspired, and they have a quite high level of technique and doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy selling work at fairs and in your workshop instead of online? Because you don't have website or online shop, do you? You sell mostly from fairs?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think it's the selling on markets and the selling in my workshop is always personal experience. I can't imagine to sell the same on internet, maybe that people would buy it without having this moment to know the other person. And I feel more and more lately also that people want to support doing and creating. And this is I find it a nice experience.
Yeah.
I find it a nice experience I like to know where my baskets go.
Yeah. So you're meeting your buyers and they're meeting you, and you like that personal contact.
Yeah. I did for quite a lot of years. I did straw hats also. I didn't really weave the braids, but I have an old sewing machine to sew straw braids together to create hats. And in the hat making, this is very interesting, how every hat is going to a person. It's like quite that the right person comes for the hat.
Do you feel like that about your baskets as well, or just the hat?
Yeah. I feel this more and more as my baskets. They are not. I'm not very good in reproducing baskets.
Each one is individual.
Yeah, I'm very bad in that. Very, very bad. And so every basket is a bit different. And it's so funny that to see who is then attracted by what. Yeah. If you have so different baskets, no, to see. Yeah. It's funny.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite basketry fair? You go to quite a few, don't you?
I went over the years. I went to Valabrec. I went in Spain to Salt and Mas de Barberans, which is in Catalonia. I went to Italian fairs. I went to Litchenfels to the market. I must say I didn't go back to Litchenfels over 20 years.
Okay.
Now sometimes I go to Litchenfels to sell and also to teach, and I like it. But I think my favorite fair is Valabrec because it's a feeling that we grew together because all these years and all these contacts are coming from there. The international contacts, because so many people would come there as visitors from the UK, from Denmark, from Belgium, really, Norway.
And they're buyers as well as basket makers. So you're making contact with both.
Yeah, you could. Me personally, I would kind of have buyers. They would come every year. That could be French people, maybe Americans or English. And other basket makers, maybe they would also have buyers from Japan.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can survive on the sales you do at the fairs and in your workshop. You don't need the online presence. You don't need your website or Instagram.
No, I survive with my selling my basketry and teaching.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so my last question, which I've asked to all the basket makers we've been talking to, is for all the basket makers listening out there who are just beginning on their journey as a basket maker, what advice would you give to them?
I would tell them to have more subjects to work on. Because if I imagine they need to make the money to live with, they should have something they could easily, maybe not easily, but make money to live, but to have spare time to experiment, to make their own experience, and trying maybe to become good in one thing and experimenting in other things, other techniques. And I think I guess that for young people in this moment, they need the social media. But it's also an important fact that sharing with people gives you so much inspiring that you couldn't have about tutorials and images on Instagram, maybe. Because weaving is, for my advice, always connected to the people who do it. And I've seen that thanks to a Spanish weaver. His name is Carlos Fontales. He did over the years film really rural basket makers, and you could see the connection of their lives, their lifestyle, and the basketry they were doing. So I think it should be in a way connected with a lifestyle. And the other point is you should always try to do it with joy. I think this is fundamental. If not, it becomes mechanic and you might get frustrated. And you should always look after your body, after your hands, move enough to have also the other side. You can't sit every day 8 hours in your workshop. I think that's not healthy. And I wouldn't be a basket weaver now after almost 40 years if I had done so. So, and also trying, maybe that's what I sometimes say to my young students, that we need to have articles that we can survive in this society, that we can pay our rent, our cars. So it can't be too bad paid. It needs to be equal. If not, it gets frustrating. It can be you can have a part of research and it doesn't matter. But I think you should have try to find a way to make your life, make it to pay your bills. And you shouldn't be also forced to teach because you need money, because the teaching should be a pleasure, not a need.
That's an interesting idea. Thank you so much for your interview. It was really fascinating. And I love learning all about the different techniques you use, because we don't use them quite as much in this country. It's really fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your interest. Thank you.